Hello and welcome to EBADay 2019 in Stockholm. I'm Hannah Wallace and joining me now in the TV studio is Vijay Kasturi from Oracle. Hello Vijay, thank you very much for coming and speaking with us. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is the digital bank of the future. Who do you think it's going to be? Is it going to be the banks, the FinTechs or the BigTechs?
So I think what's important is to realize that the disruption that we're seeing in banking is quite different from what we're seeing in any other industry. And that boils down to the kind of regulations that banks have to face, the cost of compliance, the cost of risk, and all of that is making disruption from within not a very viable proposition. So having said that, it's absolutely imperative that we have a truly digital bank, and not just for the millennials, but just about every age group and demographic is looking forward to digital financial services. And what we're seeing is each one of these players, whether it's the BigTechs, the incumbent banks or FinTechs, they've all had some successes or the other. So some of the larger banks, they're not losing their customers, so they're still managing to hang on to their core business and grow it. And some really forward-looking banks like Westpac in Australia or KeyBank in the United States, they're undergoing truly digital transformations. At the same time, you have the big techs like the Googles and the Amazons and Apples who are coming in, trying to leverage their customer base and also partner with banks to offer payments and other services. And finally, you have the neobanks, which probably are a spin-off of a traditional bank, and they're doing good work as well. So I think finally it boils down to a couple of things. Who is able to use data more effectively, efficiently, and in a more secure manner, and who's able to leverage technology innovations better in build use cases that are relevant for customers. So I think the field is open to any of these players to really be the first to launch that digital bank.
Sure, and there are multiple players in the industry, but what does this mean for the future of banking? How is it shaping up?
So we are seeing that, especially if you look at the corporate bank, it's poised for what we call corporate bank 2.0. So corporate banks are extremely important part of our ecosystem. I mean, they fund the economy. They bring innovation and growth to various economies. I think, but there's a huge potential to make that more efficient, faster, by adopting the latest in technologies and more automation. What's also important to note is that when we talk of technology adoption, today what we call the half-life of new technologies is reduced from 5 or 8 years to down to about 2 years, which means from the time an innovation is introduced by the technology industry to the time it gets adopted and rolled out to the customers, we're talking about 24 months. And that's a very, very short window. So banks need to move away from talking about buzzwords about innovation and moving towards tangible outcome, business outcomes based, proofs of concept or even rollouts.
Sure, and I think it's safe to say the role of the incumbent bank is dramatically changing. But from your point of view, how do you think they should prepare?
So I think the incumbent banks need to. There's a lot of introspection that they need to do in terms of what do they need to do to stay relevant, and how can they collaborate better with the ecosystem out there. So I think that's where a lot of the investments that we are seeing banks, the conversations that we are having with banks are around how do we digitize processes, how do we digitize corporate transaction banking, areas like cash management or payments, and essentially how do we bring the whole ecosystem together and build a digital front-to-end, front-to-back process.
Well, you certainly painted the picture there for us, but what I'd love to hear from you now is what Oracle is doing in this space and helping in this move to real-time processing.
Sure. So I think, as I said, one of the things that Oracle is doing is to try and build innovation inside our products. So trying to bring those business outcomes to the banks. And to that extent, we have invested heavily in our solutions. We build them around a couple of pillars. So that's 24/7. APIs, intraday, and immediate. So we talk of 24/7 for round-the-clock availability and robustness of our solutions. APIs for interconnectivity with the ecosystem. Intraday in terms of what having a real-time view of your liquidity positions, and immediate payments to be executed anywhere across the world. So these pillars are a part and parcel of every solution that we are building, and of course we are building a whole ecosystem of FinTechs and partners who then leverage those APIs and be able to then provide a complete complementary offering end to end to our banks.
So watch this space, I think it's safe to say.
Let's watch the space, absolutely.
Vijay, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure.